Barber Dave, Houston. Houston, Barber Dave, go ahead. You are go for SAD. Repeat, you are go for shave across the decades. Barber Dave, Houston, Roger. Go for SAD. Go for shave across the decades.
Over time I noticed there's nothing about this that ever feels quite normal. Kinda like we're always in a free fall. And if I had a time machine, I'd tell you, darling, it's not gonna be so bad. But knowing me, I wouldn't.
Hey everybody, I know what you're asking yourselves. Where did he get that cool retro 1960s shirt? Well, we'll tell you about in a couple of minutes. The 1960s were a very tumultuous decade. You figure November of 1963, John F. Kennedy gets assassinated. Vietnam, we entered the war in March of 1965, which was not good because Kennedy's promise was to get out of Vietnam or not even go to Vietnam. Johnson was pressured into doing that. Martin Luther King was assassinated June of 1968. Then Robert F. Kennedy, John's brother, was assassinated in 1968. So the 1960s sucked. And for those of us that were born in that decade, that is the history that we live with forever. However, the reason for the shirt, these shirts were very popular in the 1960s. They were considered the epitome of casual fashion. They are a very stretchy knit with banded sleeves and a banded cuff around the bottom. They were complete button-ups, and they had these cool gilded stripes and everything else. This one was actually worn by, I think, Mike Collins and Frank Borman. Not this shirt, but this style with the gilded, and then even Gene Cernan did this. So the 60s thing we're going to do today for Shaves Across the Decades, I tried to be as accurate as possible. I've got my original Air Force watch, which Michael Collins was in the Air Force, as was Frank Borman, and then I've got my moon watch. So we're doing this as much as possible. So let's talk about shaves in space. Well, every single astronaut in the Gemini and the Apollo program were issued these in their DOP kits. Yes, they had DOP kits. This Gillette is a Gillette Techmatic. So every single astronaut had one of these. Now, the reason why it was designed is because this cartridge could pop in and out. There were no razor blades in zero-G floating around, and all you did was advance the blade by turning this. I know my good buddy Nurse Dave had shown this in a thing. And then there is 10 shaves, and all you do is you just click that forward to advance the blade on a little wheel to get better shave. So this was the Apollo and Gemini astronaut issued razor. Now, they could not have shaving brushes and shaving bowls and shaving cream because there'd be shave everywhere. So the one thing that's different about this shave is I am using period-specific items, being Old Spice. So let's talk about that. The first shave in space was was actually John Young. He was part of Apollo 10, where Tom Stafford was the commander, and John Young and Gene Cernan. Now, it was also the first circumlunar navigation with the LEM, the LEM, or the landing module, better known as the LEM, and the lunar landing module. And they separated and got down to about 60,000 feet and then came back up. It was just a test run. So John Young was really credited with the first man to shave in space. However, later on, and what we're kind of doing is that Michael Collins, Apollo 11, actually was filmed shaving in space, and you can go on Google and you can see that. And he was using a Techmatic, but he was using Old Spice, which I'm using, but it was an Old Spice in a tube that it was basically, he just wiped it on his face and he shaved. Now, both his razor and the tube of Old Spice is at the Smithsonian in their Air and Space Museum. Now, what I've done is I do have an original 1960s puck of Old Spice, and I do have that in here. I also do have that, and we'll go over that in just a minute. So 1968 was credited to be saved by Apollo 8, which was Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders. They were the first astronauts to circumnavigate the moon, and it was just in the command module. But what made things very, very poignant, in my opinion, is on Christmas Eve, December 24th, going into Christmas Day, December 25th, they read from Genesis. And most people, when they got home, because the country was looking so good and the country was just hopeful that they would be okay, that Apollo 8 is largely credited for saving 1968. And then, of course, three guys in July of the following year, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins, who this shave is for, landed on the moon. So you can say that the Apollo program literally saved the 60s as far as hope, because they finally did John F. Kennedy's dream of landing a person on the moon by the end of the decade, and they did it, July 20th, 1969. So anyhow, that's our shave. So let's talk about what we're shaving with today. So again, the Gillette Techmatic. This is a brand new cartridge I just put in here, and it is set on just 2 slots less than high, so it is an adjustable gap as well. Never shaved with this. I just got this from my Apollo collection. Oh, and I must say, before we get started, www.theshavingcadre.com. Please come and visit us. We'd certainly appreciate it. And then also right over here, Drinks and Dave's. Our next live show is tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, and we've got KJ, aka Spider, as our guest. So please check all that out. And then also, this shave is actually dedicated to probably one of the few other people that I know on the cadre that is as big an astronaut NASA buff as I am, and that's Steve Crosby, aka Hasey. So this is for you, buddy. So for the aftershave, once again, period specific, ice blue aquavelva in the nice jar, and then for the cologne we'll be using Schulten Old Spice. Now both of these, the Old Spice, and I am shaving out of a mug, even though I should have went and got the cream, but I didn't for these shaves. These are both from 1964, and of course we're going to be using our Rubber Set 404 brush again. So that's our shave for the 1960s. And what do you say? Let's get started. Now this is a tallow-based version, and believe it or not, it actually still has the Old Spice smell. Yeah, I doubt whether I'll wear this shirt very often, but it'll go into my Apollo collection. But what Michael Collins did on Apollo 11 is he just took stuff out of the, took cream out of the tube and then just shaved with it. Okay, let's see how this Techmatic does. Very smooth. We'll see how it is after the first shave to see if I need to adjust the gap. Because there's really only 2 more settings I can go. But the neat thing about but what's funny is if you listen to most people when searching and doing my my research, a lot of people said that the Techmatic was a horrible shaver. Well, I don't know about them. I don't know. But right now, this is a very smooth shave. We'll see how it does. Okay, let's see how our first pass went. Well, beautiful. Well, those of you that have shaved with this that are saying it's a bad shave, I don't want to call you nuts, but you're nuts. It's a beautiful shave. And I got lucky. I got it on the first try as far as the setting. And it's, there's a high and a low setting. And I've got mine 2 detente stops from high. So it's, that would probably be considered aggressive to some, but I like aggressive razors anyway. So far it's beautiful. Very easy to handle too. Also very intuitive. Like I said, I had never shaved with this because I had it, I bought it specifically for this shave of the decades. I always wanted one, but I didn't think they were very available. And I got very lucky. I found this one, and it came with 40 brand new cartridges in the box. Now, I'll never go through all of those, but it's nice to have. In fact, I doubt very seriously I will shave. Well, I don't know, the way this thing is shaving, but I may not shave with this razor very much because it is part of my collection for Apollo. On the across the grain, I can feel the blade a little bit more. But the cool thing is it's very intuitive because it's, so basically you just hold it and it's almost at the perfect angle. And as many of you know, the astronauts received promotional items, or at least deals. They weren't allowed, believe it or not, they weren't allowed to accept personal items, but they could buy gifts. And I think, this Gillette Techmatic was made specifically for the astronaut program, I believe. That may be wrong. I haven't done a lot of research on that part of it. But every single astronaut from Gemini on had these in their DOP kits. But most of these guys, and this is why, you say, well, wait a minute, John Young and Michael Collins were the only ones to shave in space. Well, that's not true. Our good buddy Alan Shepard, who was the commander at 47 of Apollo 14, because he wasn't allowed to fly. He was kind of like Deke Slayton. Deke Slayton never was allowed to fly under the Apollo program other than the Apollo-Soyuz mission. And that was the joint Russian-American mission. And he was allowed to fly because he wasn't allowed to fly because his heart condition. So he was one of the first, Deke Slayton was one of the first Mercury 7 astronauts, and he never flew until Apollo-Soyuz. And at that time, I think he was one of the oldest men in space. But Alan Shepard had Meniere's disease, which was an inner ear disease. And so he was taken off, even though he was the first man in space, he was taken off the rotation because of that. And finally, he got a operation, and he was cleared, and he became the commander of Apollo 14. And he did shave in space, but he used an electric razor. Boo! It was a battery-operated one, and I'm sure that he was probably there was a promotion involved with that. But he's also the man that famously hit 2 golf balls on the moon. Probably the longest drives in history. But most of the guys were military guys, so they had to be clean cut, high and tight all the time. So these guys didn't like to shave. And why in the heck, with everything going on in space, why would you want to shave in space? So that's why you see most of these guys very scruffy, except for John Young and except for Michael Collins. But like I said, the shaves in space, I think, were more of a publicity thing, saying, hey, is it possible to shave in space? Although John Young's shave was never recorded as far as I know. I couldn't find any archive, but Michael Collins was. I think there's pictures of John Young shaving, but there's nothing on video but there is with Michael Collins. And then when Alan Shepard shaved with his electric, there is video of that. Well, I don't know. This is a pretty good razor. I'm finding it very, 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 very nice. And I'm also sure in watching some of the video from Mike Collins that he probably only did one pass, and if he did, it was a combination pass where he would go down and, you know, not the traditional shaving passes like we do. But that's a pretty comfortable shave. Especially for my first shave. I would definitely call that BBS for sure. Maybe just a little bit of cleanup. And I've never buffed or J-hooked with this thing, so I don't know exactly how that will be. It's not bad. I'm not going to try J-hooking with it. Like I said, for the first shave, pretty good. I would definitely call this BBS. Maybe even on the heels of DS BBS. And I think I probably will back this down maybe 1. And that's the cool thing about it. You just click it. And then you can either shave with this razor again, which I probably will just to try out, or all you do is just rotate that, click, and the blade advances. So it's kind of a neat system. It never really took off after that, but pretty cool. And it came in this really neat, you know, retro 1960s box, and it actually snapped into place, and then you had the cover. So anyways, so that's our shave. When I did catch myself on the chin, which I'm not overly surprised about. Let's see what the Allen says. Well, it's giving me a little bit of bite, so like I said, it's a little bit, it felt very comfortable, but obviously it had some aggression into it. So let's get cleaned up and we'll kind of go over. So I hope everybody enjoyed kind of my tribute to NASA and the 60s. And hopefully you'll join us tomorrow. And again, today's brush today was the Rubber Set 404. You already saw the razor. Now, obviously, we're gonna use some witch hazel that he did not shave with. And let's try the lavender today. And that's Thayer's lavender. Good stuff. Yeah, I caught myself in the chin a little bit more than I thought. There we go. And again, for our soap today, even though this is not the cream that would have been used by the astronauts, it's the same company, same soap, although in cream form, and that's Old Spice. And this is a puck from the 60s, so it is time specific. First, we're going to do Aqua Velva Blue, because Aqua Velva was a staple. And it's just, to this day, these older aftershaves are just, they're tremendous. And the glass bottle makes it worth the price of admission. Now, and I should mention that the Old Spice was my wife's father's, and it had never been opened. No, I've got 3 pucks of soap. These 2 bottles of this. I had a bottle of a little bit of Brut that was left, and then a NOS fully cased, sealed Fat Boy that I use, and I'll probably use that for tomorrow's shave or maybe a straight. So anyhow, Schulten Old Spice cologne, and believe it or not, this stuff had been sealed, but it's perfect. In fact, you know, using some of the newer Old Spice, this stuff is so much better. Oh, it's just great. It's great stuff. All right, folks. Well, oh, you know what I forgot? I forgot the talc, but I'll do that later, because that gives me an excuse to put on more Old Spice. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for joining us for our Shaves Across the Decades, 1960 to 1970. Join us tomorrow for our final shave of the week on video, and that will be 1970 to 1980. Got some fun stuff planned there as well, and also an apology to everyone who saw our clothing in the 70s. Anyhow, I'm Barber Dave. This has been Barber Dave's Barbershop at Home. I certainly hope that you enjoyed this shave across the decades, and we will see you again tomorrow, I hope. Take care.